Hey friends, welcome back to Hey Wait. If you've ever felt like your nervous system was running the show and no matter how hard you try, you just can't find your way back to yourself, this episode is for you. Because the truth is, the body you live in has needs, rules, and a language that unlocks it. And most of us were never taught how to speak that language. Not in school, not in therapy, not even in a lot of healing spaces. That's where today's guest comes in. Lisa Wimberger is someone whose work I've followed for years, and I've learned a ton from her. She is the founder of the Neurosculpting Institute and co-founder of the Neuropraxis app. And Lisa has helped thousands and thousands of everyday humans move out of survival mode and rewire their nervous systems so they can actually feel safe inside themselves. Lisa is the author of 8 books, including New Beliefs, New Brain, and Neurosculpting, and she just released a children's book called The Story of Blue, which helps kids learn the foundations of empathy. She teaches at places like Kripalu, Omega, and 1440 Multiversity, and she leads over 60 international neurosculpting franchises. I'll let her tell you more about neurosculpting, but for now, I'll tell you that it's a deeply actionable and potent meditation protocol that's about microdosing change by creating new pathways in your nervous system. And it's not about fixing you, though it definitely has legitimate healing power. It's about showing you that your nervous system isn't the enemy, it's the messenger. And when you learn to listen, it becomes your path back to you. The origin story of how Lisa got into this work is truly powerful and unique. There are parts of her story that I think you're going to relate to because for years she lived in freeze and was highly functioning on the outside, but dissociated inside. And she used meditation to check out, not connect. But when she found the science of neuroplasticity, everything shifted, and she slowly rewrote the patterns that had kept her stuck. And over time, in her own words, she became, quote, an embodied mess, and eventually a much more graceful human. Today, Lisa's living proof that it's possible to change how your nervous system relates to the world, not through insight, but through action. And she's an example of how the principles behind Hey Wait, of truly considering yourself and asking to be considered, can become an everyday way of being once you've healed your trauma at the level of your nervous system. So if you've been feeling stuck or checked out or like your body just won't cooperate with the life you're trying to live, I want you to hear Lisa's story. I want you to hear her voice and feel her presence because what she's offering isn't just powerful, it's possible. So let's get into it. Lisa, I have been so looking forward to this.
Thank you. I'm excited.
I am too. I am overwhelmed with all the things I want to ask and say, but I will try and rein it in. I've been such a fan of your work for so many years. And the thing that I love about it, it's intelligent, it's simple, it's actionable, and it's effective.
Thank you. If it's not those things, I'm definitely failing at my job. I appreciate it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you are not failing at your job. And I want to say to the listener out there, just kind of give you a heads up. We are only going to scratch the surface in this conversation of everything that you can learn from Lisa. And I'm going to say this for your sake, but also for mine, listener. I want you to try and stay as present in your body and to yourself as you can as you're listening to what Lisa has to share today. Because one, it's kind of what we're practicing in general, right? Like how to stay with yourself when you're around another person. But two, because I trust that she'll say something that has the potential to really change your life or someone that you love in their life. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not a hyperbolic person. I say it because I know the power of neurosculpting and the work that you do. So actually, Lisa, why don't we start there then? For anybody who doesn't know what it is, can you tell us what neurosculpting is?
It is a very efficient, very potent neuroplasticity practice, which feels a lot like guided meditation, but its design will get the user to dialogue with their subconscious nervous system very quickly so that we can find, edit, soften, or create new patterns that eventually get our subconscious and conscious nervous systems congruent so that we release old trauma, or we stop sabotaging, or we are able to finally move out of that abusive relationship because we see a map forward. I mean, there's no end to the change possible when you have the tools to have your subconscious habituated patterns dialogue with your conscious desires, because that dialogue is probably the richest relationship I know.
Absolutely. And I love the word congruence, because that is the embodiment of that unconscious being meeting with the conscious. And also it's what allows for the insides to match the outsides.
Absolutely.
And that is so powerful. So it's kind of like a meditation protocol. And within that, there's different techniques. Is there a specific neurosculpting technique that you find particularly surprising, even still today, in terms of its effectiveness?
I find all of it surprising, to be honest. I mean, it's a very formulaic guided meditation. Each step of the meditation is designed to activate and enhance your own neuroplastic capacity so that you learn very quickly, right? We don't want to spend 20 years unwinding a set of beliefs and patterns. Just because it took 20 years for us to get where we are doesn't mean we need another 20 to unwind it, right?
Amen.
We go very efficiently. But the surprising thing to me always, and I've been doing this now 20 years practically, is that people change really fast.
Yeah.
And I know this in my heart. I know this about the modality, but because I can't possibly assume that's going to happen when it does happen, which is all the time, I get like a kid in an amusement park. I'm like, wow, look what your body did. You shed that programming that you grew up with, or that you experienced through trauma, and now you have an entirely different option to go forward in life. And that, to me, especially when people come to me and say, I'm a bad meditator. Oh, really? Perhaps it's the kind of meditation you've been trying to do that was not where you were supposed to be. And then we get them doing neurosculpting, and suddenly they say, wow, I was really in that. How did that happen? Well, neuroplasticity is really powerful. So I'm always surprised by the efficacy of it.
Yeah. And
the accessibility of it to those who have tried other things and nothing works.
Right. Right. And just for the listener who doesn't know what neuroplasticity means, because that's an important word, can you tell us what that means?
Yeah. So you know that magical power you had when you were an infant, learning how to stand and then learning how to walk, when months earlier you didn't even know how to use your limbs? You know that magical power? That's neuroplasticity. It is our nervous system's capacity to pay attention to important things, to learn them so deeply that we can habituate them and not have to think about them again, and they run the show. So you never, unless you have blunt force trauma to the spine or spinal cord injury or particular disease, once you learn how to walk, in general, you don't have to think about that again. And the moment you experience a traumatic incident where you now have to relearn how to walk, you understand how complex that is. Well, neuroplasticity enables us to take extremely complex signals, thoughts, behaviors, package them, make them efficient, help the nervous system habituate to them so that they feel like they are just a part of us. But the gift of that also comes with the shadow, which is, that also happens to your addictions, your vices, and your negative self-talk.
Whatever you're practicing is what you practice. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So this is the overriding, introducing the healthy repatterning for that.
Correct.
Yeah. It's fun to see you talk about this, Lisa, because I can see the the passion and the excitement on your face when you said you're like a little kid, like, wow, this really works. Like I even after 20 years, I can feel the love that you have for this work.
It's so true. And the funny thing is, I have so much content. I have so many videos. I can't screen capture anything because my face is contorted in every frame of everything I'm saying. My eyebrows go up, my eyes open wide, my mouth is all twisted because truly, truly, I'm animated around this, not just because I love it mentally and emotionally, but because it saved my life.
Yeah.
You know, the rescue dog that will jump into a frozen lake to save their rescuer. That is me and neurosculpting. It saved my life. And not only do I honor that, but I'm excited by it all the time because it's like, it's my savior in a way without being like religious about it.
No, it's real. I know your origin story. It is one of the most unique and powerful origin stories that I've ever heard. And it is very true that this is your lifeline. So would you be willing to share how you got into doing this?
Sure. I don't recommend this, by the way. You know, this
Right.
where they're like, we're going to show you something really interesting. Do not do this at home. So when I was always a child who sort of had a freeze response as my stress response. It's just normal. Freeze versus fight, flee. I was a freezer. But when I was 15 on my birthday, playing with about 8 of my friends out in a field, a storm rolled in. We all took cover under someone's awning, and I was leaning against a garage door with that long crank metal handle, which was at the base of my spine. I was leaning against it. Side of the house got hit by lightning. Lightning came out through the handle and me and the boy next to me. And so I was hit on my birthday. And shortly after that, started having seizures, which lasted for decades. And my seizure disorder was basically, many years later, I learned, was basically a very well-practiced maladaptive freeze response. So I had already been a freezer. Now I experienced this crazy electrocution. And now my nervous system takes what it used to know and amplifies it. And so now anytime there was stress in my world, my body, my life, my mind, my heart, I would have a seizure because my nervous system had habituated through neuroplasticity to this really terrible response. And it took me decades to figure out what was happening. It took me doctors telling me, they don't know, I must be hormonal. I'm having tonic-clonic grand mal seizures. Well, maybe you're hormonal. I mean, it was ridiculous. I wasn't epileptic. My EKGs, my EEGs seemed normal. I was having brainstem seizures. So I learned neuroscience. I learned about neuroplasticity while I was learning neuroscience because I was dying. Literally, I was dying. I have flatlined on many occasions from these seizures. And I found this like hope, which was, wait, if I've habituated to this maladaptive nervous system response, well, maybe I could override it. I was like rolling the dice and doing the Hail Marys and not having any idea if it would work. But I had a very robust meditation practice my whole life. And
Even before you'd gotten hit by lightning.
Long before, yeah. It wasn't helping me get healthy because it was just a door opener. I needed neuroscience to tell me what to do after I opened that door, where to walk. So it was really through neuroscience, applying that to the idea of meditation, that I had created this formula that would do something very different than meditation, but use a familiar vehicle for me. And what I did was I entrained my nervous system to override the seizures having no idea if it would be successful, but knowing like I'm dying, so I don't have a choice. And it worked. And I overrode a seizure, the first seizure I ever overrode, the last seizure I ever had.
Wow.
Almost 20 years ago. I broke through it after having them for decades with my process. And that's where I say it was the rescue dog, right?
Yeah.
I knew they were gone. I knew I had done it. And then I was like, well, I have to marry this thing.
Yeah.
And so there's been 20 years of marriage to this modality where it's saved other people's lives, like so many people. So I'm married to it. So you talk about relationships, but it's mine.
This is your relationship. And there is so much in that story that is profound. And there's about 7 different directions my brain wants to go. But I'm going to tell you, I've heard you tell this story many times before on different podcasts and in courses. And the part that always fascinates me that I'm like, if I ever get to ask her this is the question I'm going to ask. There was decades between the lightning strike and you finding neuroscience, neuroplasticity. You were flatlining. You were struggling. You have talked about times where it was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And people were telling you it was fake. This was just hormone. I mean, for fuck's sake. And the thing that strikes me is that there must have been some part of you that knew there was something else, that knew to look. And though I think a lot of listeners won't obviously relate to being hit by lightning, I think a lot of listeners will relate to having a time in your life where you don't know if you can take it any longer. But there's also this part of you that's like, I'm going to keep looking.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, there's 3 distinct things that play into it. One of it is I am a pit bull of tenacity. It comes from being the only girl with older brothers and the baby, and I have to produce and prove and fight and argue and have a voice, right? So that there's a piece of that there. It's like, I do not want to give in to this. So that was one piece. Another piece was, well, actually it was my daughter. So when I had my daughter, I was nervous having my daughter because I knew that I would have seizures during menstrual cycles. Anytime my cervix was going through a shift, you're more prone to seizures when you have my kind of condition because it taps the vagus nerve, which then taps the brainstem kind of scenario. I was really scared to have natural childbirth because I was thinking, what if I seize during childbirth?
Oh, wow.
So that was the first piece of, I should probably get a handle on this. But then I had her. I was fine having natural childbirth. Then I had her. And when she was just around 3 years old, she witnessed me have a seizure and flatline in a food court. And she witnessed paramedics arrive and try to make me breathe. She watched me die. When I opened my eyes, she ran to me. I wasn't quite conscious yet, and she ran to me. And the first thing I heard, well, I heard 2 things. One, I heard someone say, breathe. Next thing I heard, my daughter saying, Mommy, did you die? Wow. I have to just...
Yeah.
When I tell you that you can't comprehend hearing that from your child.
No.
So anyway, that's what I heard. And then I had to really say, I have to get through this. Because I was also, I was a single mom at the time. Her dad and I were not in a relationship anymore. And it was pretty much me. That's what got me to do it. I don't know if tenacity alone would have done it. I certainly don't think I had enough self-love up to that point to want to fight through it anymore, because even though these seizures were not every day, they are just debilitating. They're horrific. And then you urinate yourself, you defecate yourself, you vomit all over yourself. You have no energy left when you're tonic-clonic. You use all your energy into this rigid kind of situation. And then I'd have to like lay in bed for 2 days just to be able to like get up and be normal again. I wouldn't have moved through it if it wasn't for the relationship I had with my daughter. So this is where this other piece comes in of, I valued her at that time more than me. And I needed to value something that much to feel like it was worth the fight. Had I cultivated enough self-love, that would have been another way to do it, right?
Right.
If you have enough self-love, then you will fight for that. But I was still working on that piece.
Right.
But then I had her. And so my motivation was non-negotiable. Then I got to apply my natural tenacity to a non-negotiable, combine that with the third piece, which is back against a wall.
Right.
Out of options, out of time.
That's when change really happens.
High motivation,
Yeah.
intense focus, tenacity for the repetitions and the dedication and the discipline, and out of options. That combo can change worlds.
Yes, agreed. And that I can really appreciate what you're saying. I think it's true for a lot of people that they don't have the well of self-love for that to be the thing they're fighting for. And having the immensity of love for another person that you had for your daughter is another valid way to fight for yourself through them. And there's something else about what you said that I'm so wrapped that then I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, well, I will just add that the self-love piece, this is a tangent, but I needed to have my daughter to learn about love. Because I was a freeze person, I was dissociative. When you are dissociative, it's difficult to have embodied relationships. And this really speaks to like your work, right? When you are dissociated, it is difficult to have embodied relationships. Therefore, you cannot use relationships to learn about love when you cannot feel your body.
Yes.
So I couldn't find a reflection of embodied love. Therefore, I didn't know how to tweak my understanding of self-love. And I couldn't see it reflected in anybody else. I couldn't feel it. I could love people. I loved people, but I was dissociated in that experience. Having my daughter and having her, biologically come through me forced an embodiment that was the thing I needed to wake me up to, this is how you love with embodiment. And I hadn't experienced that before. So because of that relationship, I was able to sort of exponentially accelerate my path to self-love. Like decades of, I don't know what it is, to I have a child. Oh, that's what it is. I know what it is now. And so it was that shift that made me think I should fix this, fight through it. If I didn't have her, I don't know. I mean, truly, the very last seizure I ever had did not want to come back. And I have watched myself from above a few times. And the last one I ever had, which is the one that was my back's against the wall now, this is done. When I was out, not breathing, I was negotiating. I was saying to myself, universe, God, whatever, I was saying, I am not going back, because I have to tell you, being out of your body is very easy and it's very peaceful, and there's nothing wrong with it. And every time I came back in after a seizure, it was excruciating. And I knew I was going to have another one. So why would I go back in? So I had this dialogue of like, I'm watching myself on the floor. I'm watching my husband, who I met after all of this, trying to get me to breathe. And it was the last seizure I ever had. And I was like, I don't want to come back. And something kept saying, you have a daughter upstairs in the crib. So I met my husband shortly after my daughter watched me flatline in the food court. So about 7 months after that event, this is the worst seizure now I've ever had. It's the last one I've ever had. It's the one where like, I'm not going back. Oh, I am going back because of her. I don't know that I would have come back if I didn't have her, to be honest.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people listening could probably understand, because, you know, in the work that we do, we have people come to us all the time that say, I get intellectually that being more in my body is the answer, but I don't know if I can do it. What do you say to someone who is like you, is coming from more of a freeze dissociative place, who intellectually gets it, but is like, I don't know if I'm buying into that?
Yeah. Well, I now have incredible techniques to get someone microdosed into their body, not through substance, but through practices. You know, it's scary to not have a roadmap to be embodied and then to be told you need to be embodied. Well, if I knew how to do that, I would be. So now you're just telling me to do something insurmountable and scary.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
super helpful.
Right. I figured that, you know. But when I and our licensed practitioners work with people, we know how to meet them where they are and give them microdose practices that are not too much, not too quick. So we're teaching them step by step how to embody. Just again, like neuroplasticity in infancy, you don't go from not crawling to walking. You have to go from not knowing where your legs are to start identifying these are mine. Then you have to take the next baby step and watch them kick and realize you control them. And then the next step, how do I move them? And then how do I grab something and pull myself up? And it's so many steps.
And each step along the way, you get the reward. You get
Yes.
I feel that, and I'm okay.
And the way neuroplasticity works is small, manageable, repeatable chunks equal the biggest change, because that becomes sustainable and lasting, and you can stack on top of it. Large leaps of change are not always safe for the nervous system. They're not sustainable. They're not repeatable. And when you are going into the great unknown of no roadmap, and suddenly you've leapt over all of the little stones on the pathway, you're headed for potentially a failure so big that you lose the little bit of hope you had before.
Right. Yes. As you're talking, I have this embodied sense of this relationship between massive epic change and microdosing change. And I don't know that I have sometimes I can feel it, but my words can't get there. But just appreciating how for so many of us in our life, there is the big change that usually happens to us. Sometimes you're the author of it. Like I was the author of my own big change, and it was because of bad conditioning around relationships. So there's the big thing that happens that then becomes what do I do with this change? And the answer is always one little piece at a time. Yeah. And that's so, in some ways that's comforting, in other ways it's like, well, why do we get these big ass changes that usually are destructive? when it takes the slow, persistent daily practice?
Well, there's that expression, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And that is very true with neuroplasticity. Micro changes repeated over time start to stack and become an exponentially strong foundation that then can help you leap greater distances with change over time. Microdosing neuroplasticity also moves not just vertically with depth of learning and change, but breadth. The more you micro change in one direction, the more your body and brain says change is safe enough to now do it over here. So now
here, right? Yeah.
You add dimension to your capacity to pivot and change. So when we say it's small, manageable doses, that also means it's going to hit horizontally across multiple spectrums. So your learning curve with life, skills, relationship, self-growth, anything starts to get easier and you start to learn faster. And that is a superpower. So if ever you get bogged down with one small step, I have so many steps to take, just know that that one small step will start to clone itself very soon. And that's how you leverage massive amounts of energy in the nervous system, because those cloned moments are cloned off efficiency. Now you've got efficiencies built into every aspect of how you interact in the world. Now you feel like a superhuman. I can learn anything. So what if it takes a little bit of time? Me focusing there is going to help me learn this thing over here that I'm not even paying attention to right now.
So I'm curious, as I'm listening to you talk and feeling what I would say is like a sovereignty in yourself, which, good Lord, could it be any further from what you were experiencing when you were having seizures and completely not sovereign? The question that comes to mind is, when did the self-love piece come?
I know the moment it came.
Really?
Yes, I do. Obviously, it unlocked when I got pregnant. It unlocked when I had my daughter. But the moment it became integrated and conscious, and this is a very, very candid story, and I don't think I've ever even told this story publicly. So I'm going to say it because it's here. The relationship that I had with my daughter's father was very, very misaligned for both of us. And there was addiction, substance addiction. And she crawled into the room and she asked me a question about him. And I started to cover for him. And I lied to my daughter about why he was doing the thing he was doing. Oh, he's sick, or what? I made up a lie. And my world crumbled instantly. I felt the full self-love, really, I felt the full love for her show up and say, if you can't be truthful with yourself, you can at least be truthful about her well-being. And you just lied to your child to cover for that. And everything, like literally that instant, the world pixelated. I went, oh my God, I will never do that again. We're done. It's done. I cannot raise my daughter like that. I cannot lie to her and, enable. And I'm enabling because I don't love myself. So I better figure this out. And that was the moment where what had unlocked for the 2 years prior during pregnancy and having her was integrated and consciously available. And then that moment, there were, 2 seizures that followed that realization, but it was that shift that then gave me legs
Yes.
to put a practice to getting well.
As you're talking about it, I feel like it became yours in
Yes.
that moment. Like you claimed that as yours. And what a massive moment. And yet what a ordinary moment. And that, I just want to point this out for the listener who's been along for the ride with Hey Wait, as we've been talking about this. Like, that's a hey wait moment. Hey wait, I just lied to my daughter. Never again.
Yes. That's a great way to say it. That was a big hey wait moment. It was, hey wait, if I ever do this again, I will create in her the very same pattern I have in me. No.
Right, and that is the ultimate interruption. It's a tiny moment. I'm assuming that was like a random Tuesday morning or whatever. You're right.
Random. It was something I did all the time. I would mask to friends and family, and it just happened that I masked to her in that moment. But it was the first time I had done it, and I saw her look at me and try to understand what I was saying, and I went, I'm not saying anything true at all to her right now. In fact, I'm laying on her my enabling pattern. That is terrible. That felt terrible as a mother. That felt like I was doing real harm to my child. And I couldn't stomach it. I was like, no, I'm nauseous at that. This is over. This is done. And, I had never really put anything or anyone so effortlessly first in my life until I had her. And then it taught me how to put me
everything
first.
Right. Yeah. Amen for that.
Yeah.
Again, I've got so many different directions I want to go. One thing that's curious to me, your entire work is based on science, neuroplasticity. This is replicable, effective practices, and yet it's so infused with spirituality. And I have the sense recently in your work, even more so, and I could be reading that wrong, but I get the sense that more of the things you're posting are bringing that piece in. Is that true?
You're not wrong. So for some reason, I feel very candid with you. So I'm going to tell another piece of the story that I haven't really ever talked about on a podcast. I am very, very schooled in metaphysics, like a lot of education. And I studied with the Shaya monks for 4 years, and I am deeply spiritual. And I've always been ever since I was a child. It comes with dissociation, right? You call it spirituality, whatever. Mm-hmm. But when I knew I had to marry this modality because it came through, it saved me. And yes, it was all science infused. I also knew that to take it where it needed to go, I could not be labeled metaphysical, spiritual, or woo-woo. And that was an unconscious understanding, and that was a conscious understanding. And I already saw that I would be dismissed if I led with that. So I very, very intentionally stripped all of that languaging out of my messaging so that I could reach the traumatized populations that felt abandoned, betrayed, and resistant to spirituality and metaphysics. I couldn't reach them any other way. So I had to go in physiologically. I had to go in with science. I had to go into male dominant professions that didn't want to hear about eye gazing or downloads from spirit, right? And I know enough to value both sides of the dialogue. And I embraced that side 100%. And it gave me the cachet to go into populations and places that would never have let me in before. It gave me the cachet to be on large scale stages at conferences, talking to diverse crowds who I would never reach through spirituality. But that doesn't mean I ever walked away from it. And it is only now, 20 years later, that my modality is so well vetted. I have so much efficacy. I have decades of anecdotes and clients and experience and studies and that I can now bring back the piece of me that has been there the whole time, that is allowed to infuse this. And so you're not wrong in noticing that there's been a little bit more of that. And to some people that may feel like, is that new? Is that a departure? No, it's actually what's been underneath the whole time. And you're all in a place of acceptance around it, so you won't judge me so much. When I say you all, of course, lots of people will judge me. But more people can hear it now. And honestly, I think if I led with that, it also would have mapped to trends. Yes. And the last thing that I value is trendy bullshit. Like, right. I have no time for woo-woo crap. Yeah. I have no time for small-minded scientists. Like, both sides have their pockets. Right. But I do have time for bridges. Yes. And that's where I'm at.
It is such an important time for bridges of this sort. And it is, I'm so happy to see it coming into your work. And I completely understand why you took the path you did, because that's the path so many of us took. I mean, my early days when in my teens, finding yoga and deeply, deeply spiritual bent to my work in my 20s. And then I was like, okay, I got to get the science. I got to understand trauma. I've got to become successful in the world.
Yes.
And this is the heroine's journey. I don't know if you're familiar with that book. Yeah. In this moment, I can't remember who wrote it, but this heroine's journey is that you, as a woman, you go into the world and you do the hero's journey like a man would, because there's no other path. And then you go back when you realize this is empty. I haven't fulfilled something that is deeply meaningful to me. You go back to how you began and you redo it as a whole person and a whole feminine person. And I think so much of that is this spiritual aspect. I know it's something I'm in my 40s now, feeling like, how do I want to reintegrate that? I have other friends who do similar work to us who are like, okay, I've established I'm a good scientist or I'm a good practitioner who is science-based. Now let's talk about what's really here.
Yeah. And also, there's a chronology to this too, is there is something to be said about the sage and the crone. And those happen not to the young, but to women who go through rites of passage called menopause, right? Yeah. There's a gateway to that bridged content. And I almost think it's critical for people, but I'll speak as a woman, in my 40s to have put tangible legs to something. And that requires, as you said, being in the world of like measurable things, right? But I'm not there anymore, right? I'm a couple months away from 56 and I get to be whatever the fuck I want, right? My hormones have enabled me not to care about external validation. That's not even...
Thank you, hormones.
That's not even a mindset shift. That is a hormonal shift.
Yeah.
It just happens where suddenly you, like you said, sovereignty. This is me. I do not have to prove anything to anyone. And anyone who wants me to prove it can keep their story about me because it's theirs and not mine. And I don't have time because my time's running out. So it's a very simplified equation once you go through menopause. And I went through a hysterectomy too. So I don't even have a uterus. So I have, oh my God, I have so much space and energy and all this stuff to define myself in an integrated way. And integration means I better use both right and left hemispheres. And any scientist listening to this right now who's like, oh my God, she's bringing in the woo, get over yourself. Your very left brain lateralized. And if you had more access to typically right brain content, you would have softened that judgment. And anyone who's all the way right brained and have to have just a felt sense of the world, measurement doesn't matter, get over yourself, because if that were true, you wouldn't be able to count to 5. You wouldn't be able to count how many meatballs you put on your plate or how many dollars you have in your wallet. So this siloed experience that we almost must have in our 20s and 30s and 40s dissolves in your 50s. I can't wait to see what's in my 60s. I have no idea. But right now, there is no need for me to keep proving what I've already proven. And there is no need for me to validate my existence because I exist. And no one has to like it, but it's true. And in that truth comes this permission to be able to use language to meet someone where they're at. If I'm talking to a scientist, I'm going to stay in science. Sprinkle in a little teaser of what else might be there. And if I'm talking to someone spiritual, I'm going to stay there and sprinkle in a couple of scientific measurements. And I get to do both.
Preach, lady. I'm here for it. It feels like a gift just getting to feel you speak those words, not just hear you, but feel you speak those words. It's like, I think there are going to be other women listening to this too that are like, I am ready for that in myself as well.
It gets better if you let it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I want to keep you, but I want to also let you go. So I know you are doing a retreat coming up because I know people going to it, and I can tell you afterwards. But in June, it's called a Congruence Retreat.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Yes. It is a deep dive immersion over solstice, June 20, 21, and 22.
There you go with your little bit of sprinkling.
Right?
Sorry.
Right.
Go ahead.
And it's going to be like 10 hours of nervous system learning and neuroplasticity practices and neurosculpting and really understanding how to live in an embodied way and the practices that make the subconscious patterns congruent with the conscious desires so that you can feel flow and alignment and all those magical things we hear about, right? There's mechanisms to get there. You'll get all those mechanisms. Plus, we're going to have yin yoga and we're going to have breath work to help you integrate and embody all of this. We're going to have sound bath. And then we have this really cool spatial audio VR sound experience with specially composed music for those of you who want to really get your sensory regulation dialed in. And we're going to eat farm-to-table organic food. And I'm not priced like some unreachable wellness guru, just to let you know. I have no tolerance for that either. It is quite affordable. And if it's too much at one time for someone, of course, there's payment options. But I really try to keep things accessible because I needed access to these things when I had nothing. And it's in Loveland, Colorado. It is in a very potent, beautiful space. And we do have spots left. I'd love it if you came.
I know. I'm sitting here thinking, gosh, I think I should go.
You should go. You should totally go, especially if you know people coming.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of accessible, Lisa has so much content, as she said, and it is accessible. So where's the best place for people to get to that?
So much. So you can go to neurosculpting.com and you can get a couple free meditations by signing up for them. So you can get a taster. You can buy meditations. You can register for online courses or live courses. You can register for our retreat. You can also go to Neuropraxis on Apple Podcasts, which is basically a library of neurosculpting meditations. It's not dialogue podcast. It's meditation. Each episode is a meditation. And those meditations are everything from helping your body deal with biotoxic insult, Lyme, mold, heavy metals, chronic disease, illness, chronic pain, all the way to health and happiness and mindset. So that is more for someone who doesn't want to know the how or the why or learn. They just want a practice. You can go to Neuropraxis. And for those who are like, ooh, this is juicy, I want to learn how to do this for myself, go to neurosculpting.com, go to my Instagram page. There's lots of content there. I interact a lot there.
I'm imagining right now the listener out there already typing it in and looking. Yes. And yes. I highly, highly, highly recommend you do it. There's just so much truly life-changing information. And I do not throw that word around. So I always end by asking a guest to share with us a practice that either you do or you teach that helps you to stay with yourself and stay regulated, especially in a relational space, because this is where I find, whether you're a leader or a caregiver or someone like me who's a highly sensitive person, you can lose yourself real easy around someone else. Do you have something that comes to mind, Lisa?
I do. I shake my body. And I actually shook during our talk, right? Yeah. I shake all the time. It is an incredible regulation response. And if the relationship is ratcheting up or shutting me down, I will literally shake my body for a minute or two and come back to, okay, where are we? What am I feeling? What are we talking about? Because I don't want to slip into old patterns, because that will disable my ability to be present with the person.
Right. So, and for the listener, Lisa's told us her pattern is freezing.
Yes.
So if you think freezing is a pattern, one way to dismiss that is move, shake. Yes. And if you're a fighter, if that's your tendency, you've got a lot of excess energy in your body that's going to go into something that you don't want it to. If you shake, it dispels it. So I love shaking, and it's a great, either way, whatever your default is, it can get you there.
It's the no-brainer exercise that works no matter where you are in the spectrum.
Absolutely. Good. All right. So that's your homework. And in addition to going to check out Lisa's work, your homework is to shake. Right now, you could do it right now, because I don't know about you, but I've got a whole bunch of extra energy in my body just from talking with you. And so thank you so very much, Lisa. What an absolute delight.
You're welcome. It was great to talk to you.
And thank you, listener, for listening. And if something she said lit you up, then take action on it. This is what this is all about. It's not insight, it's action. And if you listen to this and you think there is someone in my life who I think this could actually save, please send it to them. Tell them about her work. And I think that's it for this go around. I'm just going to end with the thing I always say to you, because I need to hear it myself. And that is, remember that your insides matter, and that the right people can and will meet you there. So stay with yourself. And I'll see you next week.